When the curtain opened at the New York City Opera on May 15th of 1946, Camilla Williams made history. It was a performance of Puccini's Madame Butterfly, and Ms. Williams was playing the soprano, Cho-Cho-san. And it was the first time a black woman appeared in a leading role with a major American opera company. Camilla Williams died on Sunday. She was 92 years old. As an opera singer and a civil rights advocate, she would continue to break down racial barriers. In 1963, Ms. Williams sang before tens of thousands of people at the Civil Rights March in Washington, D.C., just moments before Martin Luther King delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. When she retired from the opera world in 1971, Ms. Williams would go on to teach at the Indiana University Jacobs School of Music, again forging a new era, when she became the school's first black vocal instructor. And for pianist Richard Glazier, Camilla Williams was both a friend and a mentor. We reached him in Sacramento, California.
Mr. Glazier, it's a sad day for fans of Camilla Williams.
Yes, indeed it is. It's the end of an era. It's the end of a legacy of a woman who was very special, and it is a sad day.
How did you come to know her?
I was a piano major undergraduate at the Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana, and I used to accompany her studio, and this was back in the early 80s. And we just kind of became friends because I was just fascinated with her story, and I love music history. I just kind of went to parties with her and went to concerts with her, and we just became friendly. And she used to confide in me and, tell me about her life and her career, as she did all of the students that came through her doors at Indiana University and students that didn't come through her doors. She was a mother figure to all of us.
And let's go to this performance of Madame Butterfly of 1946, yes, which is really her debut on the big stage. What kind of an impact did that have on opera?
Well, that was huge because, as you know, imagine during the age of segregation where you have a black opera singer, and of course opera is one of the severest and most disciplined art forms known in Western civilization, a very serious art form. And here you have a black American who is given the opportunity to debut at the New York City Opera in Madame Butterfly and create a sensation. She was breaking down the color barriers, a very historic moment, not only in music history, but in American history.
How did the fellow performers on stage, how did they feel, and people in the company, how did they feel about her performing with them?
There's a story that she tells, and that's kind of a complicated question because there's several aspects. Laszlo Halas, who was the conductor of Madame Butterfly, who cast her in the lead, he received death threats for casting her. And he said, well, they'll just have to shoot me in the back while I'm conducting. And he stuck by her, was loyal to her, and color made no difference to him whatsoever, you understand? But years later, Camilla found out, and it was unbeknownst to her for decades, that her lead, who played opposite her, wrote a letter of protest to Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia about Camilla being in the opera. Of course, Mayor LaGuardia was the founder of the New York City Opera, and Camilla never knew this until maybe a decade ago. And it was a very, very devastating discovery for her, but one that it was very powerful, and she found out the truth. But her life was based, and this is very important, her life was based on love and goodness and religion and love thy neighbor, and she carried no bitterness in her heart. Very kind of different than Lena Horne, for instance, who she suffered from terrible racism. Of course, she had wanted a part in Showboat and didn't get it. Ava Gardner got it in the film. She carried a lot of bitterness in her heart because of that lost opportunity, and Lord knows what other opportunities we'll never know about. And I think the same thing goes for Camilla Williams, but her attitude was love thy neighbor and just love in her heart. They wanted her to write a book, and they wanted her to tell all the dirty laundry and all the stories, and she refused to do that. She goes, my book is about love.
If you have one memory of Camilla Williams that you want to share with us today, what would that be?
That memory would be that her studio was just absolutely adorned with mementos of her career, letters from Leopold Stokowski praising her and Eugene Ormandy praising her and Geraldine Farrar praising her, and pictures with presidents, with Eisenhower and Truman, who she sang for. And you would walk into her studio, whether you were going for a vocal lesson or whatever, it was a safe place. She was honest. She told it like it was, but with elegance and class and grace and style. She was an impeccable dresser, and she acted like she dressed. She was a true gem of not only the opera world, but the world in general. And we were lucky that she touched our lives, and that her recordings will live for generations to come, to hear that glorious voice, as she always said, that was such a great gift from God.
Well, I think in a moment we're going to hear that extraordinary voice. But I thank you for sharing your memories of Camilla with us today, Mr. Glazier.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Pianist Richard Glazier was a friend of Camilla Williams, who passed away on Sunday at the age of 92. Mr. Glazier was in Sacramento, California,